Veluwanaram of Ontario, Canada, Buddhist Temple of Laotian in Caledon, and that is the largest temple in Canada. Overview of merit-making activities of Buddhist and traditions each year. A place where many people come to make merit every year. The best places to visit in Canada for Buddhism. It's the most important places in Buddhism are located in the 17969 Airport Road, Caledon, East Ontario, L7K 2K1, Canada. Who we are. We are a community of Laotian people that volunteer our hearts and efforts to create a place of worship for the believers and followers of Buddha. Who we are. We are a community of Laotian people that volunteer our hearts and efforts to create a place of worship for the believers and followers of Buddha. About us. Discover the fruits of hard work and determination of the Laotian community that got them to where they are now. Visiting. It is important to practice the appropriate mannerisms of the Lao culture and Buddhist traditions when visiting the Wat. Donate. Any sort of donation is always welcomed, whether it is your time or financial support. There is always continuous development and expansion at the Wat. Watch calendar. Wat Veluwanaram of Ontario is a Lao Buddhist temple found on the outskirts of the Greater Toronto area in a small town of Caledon East. It services the Buddhist community with who interesting about religious, educational, moral, and social purposes. Theravada Buddhism is central to Lao cultural identity. The national symbol of Laos is the That Luang Stupa, a stupa with a pyramidal base capped by the representation of a closed lotus blossom which was built to protect relics of the Buddha. The shrine has been rebuilt several times since being created in the 13th century by the Khmer, with the largest expansions by King Setthathirath in the 1500s as part of a nationwide building campaign. Watch calendar. Wat Veluwanaram of Ontario is a Lao Buddhist temple found on the outskirts of the Greater Toronto area in a small town of Caledon East. It services the Buddhist community with who interesting about religious, educational, moral, and social purposes. Theravada Buddhism is central to Lao cultural identity. The national symbol of Laos is the That Luang Stupa, a stupa with a pyramidal base capped by the representation of a closed lotus blossom which was built to protect relics of the Buddha. The shrine has been rebuilt several times since being created in the 13th century by the Khmer, with the largest expansions by King Setthathirath in the 1500s as part of a nationwide building campaign. Watch calendar. Wat Veluwanaram of Ontario is a Lao Buddhist temple found on the outskirts of the Greater Toronto area in a small town of Caledon East. It services the Buddhist community with who interesting about religious, educational, moral, and social purposes. The goal of Buddhism is to become enlightened and reach nirvana. Nirvana is believed to be attainable only with the elimination of all greed, hatred, and ignorance within a person. Nirvana signifies the end of the cycle of death and rebirth. Theravada Buddhism is central to Lao cultural identity. The national symbol of Laos is the That Luang Stupa, a stupa with a pyramidal base capped by the representation of a closed lotus blossom which was built to protect relics of the Buddha. The shrine has been rebuilt several times since being created in the 13th century by the Khmer, with the largest expansions by King Siddhartha in the 1500s as part of a nationwide building campaign. The goal of Buddhism is to become enlightened and reach nirvana. Nirvana is believed to be attainable only with the elimination of all greed, hatred, and ignorance within a person. Nirvana signifies the end of the cycle of death and rebirth. A good life, according to Buddhism. A real best life is a happy one, which is not the same as getting what you want. Real happiness is freedom from these poisonous roots of suffering, also called neediness, hatred, and ignorance. The Buddha explained that it's easy to live a real best life. Do you want to go to the temple and make merit? When entering a temple, what Buddhists will receive is 1. Conversation with monks. 2. Receive the 5 precepts. 3. Practice meditation and pray to Buddha. 4. To have knowledge of the teachings of the Lord Buddha, etc. Buddhism is a faith that was founded by Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, more than 2,567 years ago in India. With about 470 million followers, scholars consider Buddhism one of the major world religions. Its practice has historically been most prominent in East and Southeast. Siddhartha Gautama, the founder of Buddhism, who later became known as the Buddha, lived during the 5th century BC. Gautama was born into a wealthy family as a prince in present-day Nepal. Although he had an easy life, Gautama was moved by suffering in the world. He decided to give up his lavish lifestyle and endure poverty. When this didn't fulfill him, he promoted the idea of the middle way, which means existing between 2 extremes. Thus, he sought a life without social indulgences, but also without deprivation. After 6 years of searching, Buddhists believe Gautama found enlightenment while meditating under a Bodhi tree. He spent the rest of his life teaching others about how to achieve this spiritual state. When Gautama passed away around 483 BC, his followers began to organize a religious movement. In the 3rd century BC, Ashoka the Great, the Mauryan Indian emperor, made Buddhism the state religion of India. Buddhist monasteries were built and missionary work was encouraged. Over the next few centuries, Buddhism began to spread beyond India. The thoughts and philosophies of Buddhists became diverse, with some followers interpreting ideas differently than others. Today, many forms of Buddhism exist around the world. The 3 main types that represent specific geographical areas include 1. Theravada Buddhism, prevalent in Thailand, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Laos, and Burma. 2. Mahayana Buddhism, prevalent in China. 3. Japan, Taiwan, Korea, Singapore, and Vietnam. 4. Tibetan Buddhism, prevalent in Tibet, Nepal, Mongolia, Bhutan, and parts of Russia and northern India. the Dharma Buddha's teachings are known as Dharma. He taught that wisdom, kindness, patience, generosity and compassion were important virtues. Specifically, all Buddhists live by 5 moral precepts, which prohibit 1. Refrain from taking life. An example, not killing any living being. For Buddhists, this includes animals. So many Buddhists choose to be vegetarian. 2. Refrain from taking what is not given, not stealing from anyone. 3. Refrain from the misuse of the senses, not having too much sensual pleasure. For example, not looking at people in a lustful way or committing adultery. 4. Refrain from wrong speech, not lying or gossiping about other people. 5. Refrain from intoxicants that cloud the mind, not drinking alcohol or taking drugs, as these do not help you to think clearly. The Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths, which Buddha taught, are 1. The truth of suffering, dukkha, not being at ease, suffering, note 1, from dushta, standing unstable, is an innate characteristic of the perpetual cycle, samsara, lit, wandering, of grasping at things, ideas, and habits. 2. The truth of the cause of suffering, samudaya, origin, arising, combination. Cause, there is dukkha, unease, disbalance when there is, or it arises simultaneously with tanha, craving, desire, or attachment, lit, thirst. 3. The truth of the end of suffering, nirhoda, cessation, ending, confinement. Dukkha can be ended or contained by the confinement or letting go of this tanha. 4. The truth of the path that frees us from suffering, magga. Path, noble eightfold path, is the path leading to the confinement of tanha and dukkha. Collectively, these principles explain why humans hurt and how to overcome suffering. The Eightfold Path. The Buddha taught his followers that the end of suffering, as described in the Fourth Noble Truths, could be achieved by following an eightfold path. In no particular order, the Eightfold Path of Buddhism teaches the following ideals for ethical conduct, mental disciple, and achieving wisdom. 1. Right understanding, samadhi. 2. Right thought, samasankappa. 3. Right speech, samavaka. 4. Right action, samakamanta. 5. Right livelihood, sama ajiva. 6. Right effort, sama vayama. 7. Right mindfulness, sama sati. 8. Right concentration, sama samadhi. Sangha is a Sanskrit word used in many Indian languages, including Pali, which means association, assembly, company, or community. In these languages, Sangha is frequently used as a surname. In a political context, it was historically used to denote a governing assembly in a republic or a kingdom, and for a long time it has been used by religious associations, including Buddhists, Jains, and Sikhs. Given this history, some Buddhists have stated that the tradition of the Sangha represents humanity's oldest surviving democratic institution. In Buddhism, Sangha refers to the monastic communities of bhikkhu, monks, and bhikkhuni, nuns. These communities are traditionally referred to as the Bhikkhu Sangha or the Bhikkhuni Sangha. As a separate category, those Buddhists who have attained any of the 4 stages of enlightenment, whether or not they are members of the monastic community, are referred to as the Noble Sangha.